Hey guys, this is Carnifex with Nerd This, and we have another video today on Shadow of War Mobile. This is going to be our Orc overview video. I'm going to be going over my ranking for the various classes and some of the characteristics of the classes and where the stats for those classes rank relative to each other. So you have 6 classes of orcs. You have your commanders, right, which these are your tanks. They all commanders will have taunt as their top strength, which is kind of like their ability. Yeah, just like with characters, you level them up by using some grog instead of scrolls and dominance instead of Mirian. You use glory to increase their star level or their rank if they're not already overlords whenever you get them. Yeah. So you have commanders. Next, you have tricksters. So tricksters have good overall base stats, but they're not particularly exceptional in anything. But they're just kind of overall, they're all around good orcs. Then you have trackers. Trackers are, you can see here, like they have relatively same amount of attack and ability power. It's not as exceptional as a marksman's, but they have the best crit chance of all the orcs, and their crit rating is off the charts. So whenever they do hit with crits, it's crazy, and their dodge is pretty good as well to help mitigate some of that damage. Next, you got marksman, right? Marksman, the ranged arrow shooters, they have high attack, so you can see that one is almost twice as much attack as that tracker. Their crit chance isn't quite as high, but the crit rating is still really good. They're really great. I really like marksmen. Then you have combat masters. Let me grab one of these down here. I haven't found a good combat master yet, and I've gone through a lot of orcs. They just either I'm really unlucky or just whatever algorithm they use to determine the traits that are more likely to get on these guys. They just haven't found a good combination yet. But you'll see here whenever I show you the stats breakdowns in just a little bit that they like the tricksters have really great all-around stats. If you consider kind of like overall stats rankings, they're near the top. They just they're melee, and being a melee DPS is I would love to get a lifesteal oriented tank, which would have to be a combat master, but I haven't found one with the right combination yet, so I can't really evaluate that yet. But their primary use is probably going to be as DPS, and then finally you have the destroyer class. And I'm going to try not to rag on destroyers too bad. They have a sticky bomb, and that's all they have. So if you look at their stats, other than ability power, their ability defense isn't terrible. They have the same crit chance as every other orc that isn't a tracker, but other than ability pen and ability power, their stats are truly abysmal. They come in last place in almost every single statistic. If you take one thing away from this, destroyers, terrible. Never invest in destroyers, other than maybe if you want them to do jobs and stuff, and that's just kind of what you're going to develop there. Fine, fair enough. For combat, you do not want to use destroyers. All of this information is about, this is going to be about how to do things in campaign, right? This is not getting into the theory crafting of what I think they might be doing later. This is regarding the usefulness of orcs in the campaign. So when you're doing the nodes, you're doing Gorgoroth, you're doing Saragoth, where you need some orc help to power through, unless you're in that the heavy pay-to-play contingent. So at this point, I'm going to bring up this little thing in the corner. You guys are probably wondering what that was. I'll get into the abilities. That'll have to be a separate one, because when I timed this before, I just simply didn't have enough time. Maybe if I go through really quick on this, let's see. Commanders, I give the top rank because having a split tank option really does make a difference, especially if you're only running, if you're one of those people running a one-man frontline in Baranor. Having someone to split and soak that damage with can help out a lot, especially if you're doing the Lady Marwyn support, because then you can kind of get them both down some damage, and share the damage and heal 2 people at the same time instead of only healing Baranor effectively. Marksman, I would say they're equivalent to trackers in like their statistics and their abilities and everything. But the problem is that for trackers, they're melee. They have to move every time their opponent moves in order to be able to attack them. Marksmen have a range they can attack within. So, and they're also out of harm's way. Marksmen are superior to trackers for that one reason. Other than that, I love trackers. Trackers are great other than the fact that they are melee. Tricksters I throw in because, again, they're kind of like the ranged combat masters, the great overall stats, but they're ranged, which means that it's easier for them to not die. And they did fix that in a recent patch to where tricksters can still use their abilities even if their enemies are dead. Anyway, combat masters. And yeah, this is like using orcs as your allies. This isn't like if you see them out in a... It kind of is also if you want to see them out in the node, but this is how are they useful to you when you're bringing them in as allies. Combat masters, they have great overall damage, but they're like great overall stats, but they're melee, which reduces your effectiveness always. And I cannot seem to find them with complementary traits where all traits are complementary. It's been really hard. So whatever algorithm they use to randomize that trait allocation just doesn't seem to be working in their favor. And the destroyers, again, just garbage. So let's go into class stats. So you can see here, basically I took the stats of all of the classes, when they're at the same level, same star level, tracked it through a few levels, remain consistent, the stat gains are flat. So this is if all things are equal, they're on the same level, they have the same star. This, their stats prior to any traits being, impacting them. And just to show you that, actually, real quick here. Ding, 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 ding. Let's go to. So you can see here that this guy has. Oh my gosh, love it when it does that every once in a while. All right. You can see here this guy has a 10% attack for each ally and some bonus armor pen. His armor pen is 238. His attack is 794. This orc over here has a shattering strike. Has none of those attack or armor pen boosting things. Has the same armor pen, same attack. So these traits, you're not seeing the impact of those traits on their stats in the stat menu. You're not going to see them there. They'll only become like present whenever they're in the fighting. You won't be able to kind of compare stats that way. So if you see a stat there, that is a stat unaffected by the traits. So let's pull this up here. All right, so health, imagine that. Commanders have the most, the tanks have the most health. After that, it's the Combat Master and the Trickster. You're going to see a lot of that. Combat Master and the Trickster are going to come in second and third a lot. Tracker and Marksman come in fourth and fifth. And then Destroyer, that is also going to be a theme, comes in last place. For flat attack damage, Marksmen get top marks. But it's... Combat Master comes in second. Trickster comes in third, right? Tracker comes in fourth. They're more about their crit rating and crit chance. Destroyer comes above the tank. Good for freaking them. Ability power. Yeah, one trick pony. Destroyer comes in first there. They'll come in first in ability pen too. And that's it. After that, you have the Trickster. Trickster is the next most ability power. And then you have Trackers coming in after that because they have the more balance between the attack and ability power. Then you have Marksman, Combat Master, and then Commanders. Again, Commanders don't need ability power. It's not what they're doing. Armor and ability defense, you got Commanders. And then you have Combat Masters. Then you have Tricksters. The Destroyers do have higher ability defense, but even in the armor, our Marksmen come above them. Trackers are at the bottom. They do not have very good hit mitigation stats. They have really great dodge, but if it hits, it's going to hurt harder than anyone else. Crit rating and crit chance. So for crit chance, the Tracker is the only orc with a stat, a crit chance other than 50%, they have 75%. So they win there. Everyone else gets second, or if you're the destroyer, you get last. Crit rating starts off with the tracker marksman, which is awesome because again, like that is one of the reasons why I really love them as DPS. Combat master, commander, trickster, destroyer. Destroyer sucks. Crit avoidance. Commander comes in first. Again, imagine that. The damage mitigation. They're coming first. Again, you see like Combat Master, Trickster coming in second and third. Marksman and Tracker coming after. Destroyers at the bottom a lot. Accuracy. Tracker didn't have a lot of accuracy. That's kind of the one thing where it's like, hey, that's kind of weird. But again, your marksmen are great, which is why I put the marksman above the. It's just one of the reasons why I put the marksman above the Tracker. Overall, they just are better at doing what they do, and they're less vulnerable than the trackers. Yeah, again, ability pin, destroyer gets first place, and then in that, but they basically throw a bomb and then they die. That's what destroyers do. Yeah. I hate seeing destroyers because it means that I'm not going to get anything good to brand, but I love seeing destroyers because it means they're going to be easy to kill. So I even put together a little here, like a hypothetical composite score. Technically we don't have access to things, but basically I added together the rankings of physical power. So, accuracy, armor pen, attack, crit rating and crit chance, all those things together, and you can see what kind of came out on top. You can see marksman came out on top for physical power, combat masters and trackers coming in right behind, tricksters after, and then garbage destroyer, garbage commander. Ability power, trackers getting a slight edge because again that crit still matters with abilities. That crit still matters. So then you have even the destroyers didn't even win the ability power category. Like that's just how craptastic the destroyers are, because they basically have those two stats. Physical defense, that was a bit of a closer situation. I didn't count HP. The commander has so much more HP than the combat master. It's insane. I didn't include HP in physical and ability defense. I guess I could have added it in both. In that case, the commander comes out on top. But I want to say, even though they have the same score here, that's just because of where everyone else lands relative to everything else. It's because like dodge comes into effect, which the commander doesn't have as good a dodge. So there just weren't as many stats coming in, but the commander is significantly better than the combat master at staying alive. Ability defense, 15 HP. They just have so much more HP. The destroyer, garbage, right? And then that kind of came down and gave them an overall score. And again, the combat master comes out on top. They have great stats. If I can get one with complementary traits, I will be so pumped about using and leveling a combat master. They are just so hard to find. Trackers get a slight edge here, but really, again, just when you take into account the fact that they're melee, they have to move, they're more vulnerable, you got to give it to the marksman. It's kind of dumb to compare the commanders to the rest of them here. I felt like I couldn't exempt them because there were scenarios where the commander ranked up in between. It wasn't always at the bottom or the top. So I wanted to have the spacing in between the DPS classes here. So tricksters come in second, trackers, marksmen, get destroyer, just absolute stinking garbage heap. So that is the orc overview video. I think if I have not been able to effectively persuade you to not use destroyers, I don't know how to do that then. Yeah, there you go. So there's my overview on orcs and their stats and kind of where they stack up against each other. And I'll do one on each class later, and because you'll see that I have I have tiers for every class, and we'll break those down. Go into these abilities, which ones I think are best for each class and in general. Until then, keep gaming, and I'll see you next time.